why right now might be the best time to buy, and we'll show you with specific numbers. And on the flip side, it might be best to wait until after the election to sell your home. So we're going to dive into the September market report, go through some statistics, and again, explain to you why we believe buying now versus later is actually the best option.
Yeah, and then we're also going to go over just general market stats and give you guys a good overview of what's happening in April. And as a reminder, my name is Brady Fagel. This is Jesse Taff. And here at Boise Real Estate Insights, our goal is to provide you with as much information as possible on the Boise Valley and really give you some local tips. It's also helpful for out-of-staters, but specifically local. So give us a call or a text anytime, whether you're buying or selling a home or you're not. If you just have general questions, reach out to us anytime. We're here to help and happy to do that.
And we'll be doing these at least once a month. And yes, the market can change month to month. So good to keep an eye out for the next one.
And with that, September, we're seeing it definitely slower than we probably would have thought. Interest rates came down, and despite that, it seems like it's almost even slower than it was.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too, is a lot of great news on the interest rate front. They actually have come down even further into the low sixes, but we haven't felt that surge of buyers yet. And to me, it's kind of just showing there's more of an impact on the upcoming election than maybe I first assumed. We thought it was more rate driven, but that obviously is coming up here in the next few months, and we'll see how all that plays out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've talked to quite a few people and they're telling me that, no, I want to wait until after the election. And it just has to do with this uncertainty with market and who's going to become president. The funny thing is, and we talked about this last month, is 8 of the last 9 elections didn't matter if it was Democrat or Republican who got voted in as president. Home sales skyrocketed after the election. So it just has to do with that uncertainty. People are just waiting and waiting. And then as soon as the election happens, they come back out into the market. And we're seeing that slowdown before the election happens here in November. And I think some of that also probably has to do a little bit more with, I think, Harris being a little bit more of a favorite than maybe people might have thought. And so that's creating a little bit more uncertainty. Regardless, it's just looking like an emotional thing happening with a lot of people and just wanting to wait.
And when we say, slow, obviously it's still a very strong market. We aren't seeing prices drop drastically or really at all. In some areas, we actually are seeing prices continue to rise. So that's where, some people always want to look back and say, is a crash coming depending on the election or depending on interest rates? And that's not the case. We might not see that immediate buyer surge, but that's because they're all still on the sideline, and that's where the demand is still there. It's just a lot of people are waiting for that one trigger or that one instance or event to get them to the next step, which is going to be getting back into the market. So demand is still very, very high, but a lot of it's just pent up and waiting on the sidelines.
Yeah, we've seen definitely not a decrease. It's just kind of been a stagnant. Prices are staying the same. Days on market's going up, inventory's going up, but the prices are still staying the same, which means that the demand is kind of keeping up with the supply. So yeah, still a healthy market. There's nothing that is going to be something we need to worry about. And with that, the buyers waiting for that event to happen to come back into the market. Interest rates has been a big thing happening recently. They've come down to 6.2%, which is the lowest they've been in over a year now. And that's because of the Fed rate cut that's coming next week. But people might think that, when the Fed cuts the rate next week, they'll go down even farther. That's not necessarily the case. These prices have already been built into that happening. So the mortgage rates are different than the Fed rate, and mortgage rates have already come down to price in that 0.25% drop that they're gonna do next week. The only thing we might see a difference here is if they end up coming out and they do a 0.5% cut next week, then we might see more mortgage rates drop.
Yeah, and also just their conversation after the actual rate decision to see how aggressive they might continue to lower rates. If they feel like the economy's ready or hurting enough and they get more aggressive with future rate cuts, then we will see mortgage rates react to that as well.
These two events kind of coming in line. So you have the election and then rate cuts, possibly more throughout the year. All of those are going to time out right around November, December. And so we could, or we will likely see a price increase and sales go up substantially after the election. And that's just based on history. When interest rates come down, more people are able to afford to buy. And with history after elections, home sales go up. And so this is where this topic of buying right now, if you can, versus waiting, is the important point on what's happening right now in Boise in September. Because if you buy now, you get the equity gains. You might not get to capitalize on another 0.5% interest rate drop, but just running through some numbers, if you put 20% down on a $400,000 house right now and you have that 6% interest rate that we're at, your payment would be $1,985 a month. If you were to wait and buy later, your home would be most likely worth $420,000. So you'd be paying $20,000 more. You'd have the lower interest rate at 5.5%, and your mortgage would be $1,997 a month. So it would actually be more per month if you decide to wait until interest rates drop, and then of course after the election.
Yeah, and that's where, again, getting in early in all scenarios of real estate usually makes most sense. And if we were expecting a 1 or a 2% decrease in interest rates, we might have a different conversation, but unfortunately they aren't going to drop that fast, and at some point they are just going to stabilize and stay put. But as we've seen here recently or over the last 100 years, prices are not going to stay put for that long. They're going to continue to go up, and that's where the numbers show, let's say a $20,000 difference in home price versus a 0.5% in interest rate is negligible, but you don't take advantage of that equity gain.
Yeah, exactly. You'd rather have the $20,000 in your bank account, your equity in your home, than not. And then the other thing is, if we didn't have the election, I think we may be saying something a little bit different, because winter in Boise, the market, it tends to slow down even more. And so another 0.5% interest rate drop might not affect it as much. But when you combine this lower interest rate with the election being over, I think it's kind of creating that recipe where right now might be the best time to buy versus waiting until after. The difference with this, though, is going to be if you want to sell your home.
Yep, and that's where we're actually kind of rarely say, maybe waiting until a certain event happens, in this case, post-election, to put your home on the market. Yes, it will be in a different season, but there are still a lot of buyers out in winter. But just like we mentioned, with things a little bit slower right now, we would expect that influx of buyers to come in after the election. And if you listed, let's say now or in October, you might be waiting on market, 20, 30, 40 days. Whereas if you did it post-election, there might be more buyers to come take a look and scoop it up in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah, that's the important part there is when you go to sell your house, the first week or 2 weeks is the most important, and so you get the most traffic and the most opportunity to get more for your home. And so if you put your home on the market now, it's most likely going to sit unless you're in one of the hotter areas, and even then, some of the top neighborhoods in the valley right now, they're still kind of sitting with what we're seeing in September. But aside from that, you would end up sitting for the 30 days after the election, dropping your price or having it stay the same, just for you to sell your house for less than if you just waited the 2 or 3 months, and you would get most likely more for your house if you were to sell after the election.
One strategy that we're seeing work really well for some of our clients personally is looking at building a new home. And that's because you can take advantage of prices now, but have the opportunity to float your rate and possibly take advantage of lower rates in the future. So if you're looking at potentially buying a new home or building, take a look at this video here where we go highlight an amazing community in South Meridian, Pinnacle, and obviously reach out if you guys have any questions or want to take a look at any of these homes.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching. We look forward to meeting you.